Economic development is one of the newest, most exciting and most challenging branches of the broader disciplines of economics. The concepts of development economics often draw on relevant principles and concepts from other branches of economics in either a standard or modified form. For the most part, it is a field of study that is rapidly evolving its own distinctive analytical and methodological identity. The principles of development economics are key to the design of successful economic development policy and programs as we look ahead. Liberal and new liberal economies are concerned primarily with the efficient least cost allocations of scarce productive resources and with the optimal growth of these resources over time so as to produce an ever expanding range of goods and services. It deals with an advanced capitalist world of perfect markets, consumer sovereignty, automatic price adjustment, decisions made on the basis of marginal private profit and utility calculations, and equilibrium outcomes in all product and resource markets. It assumed that economic rationality and a purely materialistic, individualistic, self-interested orientation toward economic decision making. Development studies deals with the economic, social, political and institutional mechanisms, both public and private, to bring rapid and large-scale improvements in level of living for the peoples of Africa, Asia and Latin America and formerly socialist Eastern European countries. Development studies is concerned mainly with the economic, cultural and political requirements for effecting rapid structural and institutional transformations of entire societies in a manner that will most efficiently bring the fruits of economic progress to the broadest segments of their populations. As Development says, development implies creating the conditions for the realization of the potential of human personality. Its evaluation must therefore take account of three interlinked economic criteria, namely poverty, unemployment and inequality. Any development model or concept or principle who claim that our economy is developing, we need to ask what has been happened to poverty, what has been happened to unemployment, what has been happened to income inequality gap. Development studies focus on the mechanisms with a larger role of government and some degree of coordinations between public and private initiatives in economic decision making process towards transforming the economy and society. To make the most effective strategies for breaking out from poverty traps in which past poverty causes and future poverty families, regions and even entire nations are moving in cyclical order. To increase the availability and widen the distribution of basic life-sustaining goods such as food, shelter, health and protections. To raise levels of living including quality education, better health, freedom and choices for more job opportunities with higher incomes. Greater attention to cultural and human values. To expand the range of economic and social choice available to individuals and nations by freeing them from servitude and dependence. To minimize and reduce income inequality gap among and between nations and to cleaner environment. Any measurement of development could prove inadequate for policy purposes. There are both conceptual and methodological problems associated with the definition of development. Komen and Nixon suggest that it is a process for the improvement of conditions in society, but that the relative level of development is necessarily a normative concept. Traditional economic measures based on GNI, gross national income, and per capita income and utility of that income. The new economic measures based on leads to improvement in well-being, Emerson capability approach, capability as freedoms enjoyed in terms of functioning, development and happiness, well-being in terms of being well and having freedoms of choice, beings and doings. Economy as social system, the need to go beyond simple economics. Interrelationships between economic and non-economic factors such as political, cultural, religious, geographical habits and attitudes. Importance of taking account of institutional and structural variables along with more traditional economic variables. Now, we are living in the era of globalization, especially since 1990s. Its globalization new era started when the balance of power, international balance of power, shifted in the favor of American style, American-led capitalist systems. When the implosion of Soviet-led socialist bloc collapsed. The globalization, new era of globalization is the process of international finance, capital, trade, technology and workers' mobility at global levels. It is a process by which the economies of the world become more integrated and following global rules and regulations of international agencies such as the World Trade Organization, as well as actions by more governments removing trade barriers and opening markets around the world. Goods and services, factors of production and their owners, financial capital, enterprises, technology, brand names, knowledge, ideas and culture and values all move more freely across national frontiers than at any time since 1990. Globalization affects virtually every nation or region in the world. The phenomenon is driven first by technological advances, reducing the cost of transportation, capital mobility and communication, and second by deliberate political decisions to reduce or even to eliminate commercial and trade barriers to international mobility, potentially increasing opportunity for beneficial trade, choice and freedom for developing countries if domestically create huge networks of production and distribution through a specialization, means international division of labor and diversification of risk management. Its challenges of finance capital dominations, access to global financial markets and international portfolio diversification makes it possible win-win situation in principle to ensure the residence of a nation against the risk, for example, terms of trade shocks. But in practical, international financial game players just play game within the game players in service sector, especially through stock exchange. Historically, we have seen the first industrial revolution started in the late 18th century and the second around 100 years later to Thomas Edison's electric lighting and Ben's horseless carriage and countless other inventions that changed the world. Those scientific and technological inventions massively improved human lives, sweeping away old economic structures and transforming the society. That they created new economic opportunity on a mass scale with plenty of new work to replace the older. A third great wave of invention in computing and information and communication technology in the late 20th century, advancing and transforming the economy and social values and culture of the society. In economic field, finance capital is a new innovated innovation is finance capital. Now each and every country we are using today for investment and for development purposes. Advanced technologies including machine intelligence, the global wave and advanced robotics are capable for delivering many remarkable innovations. Unnamed vehicles, pilotless drones, machines that can instantly translate hundreds of languages, mobile technologies that eliminates the distance between doctors and patient and between teacher and students. Whether the digital revolution bring mass job creation to make up for its mass job destructions remains to be seen. For example, the smartphones carried by consumers that world over have vastly more processing power than the supercomputers of the 1960s. Transistors have become so small that shrinking them further is likely to push up their cost rather than reduce it. Google and Amazon are slashing the price of cloud computing to customers. The most competent Chinese business agency, Alibaba, operates a series of online marketplaces in China and elsewhere, handling more transactions than Amazon and eBay combined. Online retailer Alibaba sold more than $2 billion of goods in the first hour of Chinese annual single day in 2015. We have seen last year Alibaba shipped more than 150 million packages, or about 5.775 billion in gross merchandise volume. Since then, it had gone on to become a massive day of sales for China's fast-growing e-commerce markets. So it is why, because of digital revolution, we are using advanced technology in almost all fields, not only in health sector, in education sector, in defense sector, in commercial sector, commerce and business sector. Almost all sector we are using advanced technology. So it is because of digital revolution. The market is expected to grow at an annual rate of 25% over the next few years, from 390 billion in 2014 to 718 billion in 2017. We can see in the practice of digital technology, online e-commerce or business. New scientific innovation is trickling into new areas in finance. For instance, cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin hint at new payment technologies, and education. For instance, the development of new and more effective online courses offering may topple the business of higher education. There is no doubt hardware processors to cameras to sensors continues to get better, smaller and cheaper, opening up opportunity for drones, robots and wearable computers, all reducing human efforts. This wave is likely to bring vast improvements in living standards and human welfare, but history suggests that society's adjustment to it will be slow and difficult, because more than half vast population still they are illiterate. So it's very difficult to adopt or apply the advanced technology. At the turn of the 20th century, writers conjured up visions of dazzling technological future. Even some large, rich economies were limping through a period of disappointing growth in output and productivity. Carl Benedict Frey and Michael Osborne of Oxford University recently analyzed over 700 different occupations to perceive how easily they could be computerized, and concluded that 47% of employment in America is at risk, high risk of being automated away over the next decade or two. So we can see not only in the developing country but in advanced country, older because of new technology when we adopt new technology is replacing by older technology. So older structure, economic structure, those employee or workers, suppose existing workers working with older structure, they will lose their jobs. And in America we have seen 47%, not a small number of workers, 47% of employment in America is at high risk. Now, highly sophisticated advanced technology is disappointing economic growth in a new age of globalization. The political systems are struggling to accommodate the demands of growing numbers of dissatisfied, unskilled workers. Recent innovation is simply less impressive than it seems, and certainly not powerful enough to offset the effect of demographic change, inequality, and sovereign indebtedness. Progress in information and communication technology is less transformative than any of the three major technologies of the second industrial revolution we have seen. More manufacturing work can be automated, and skilled design work accounts for a larger share of the value of trade, leading to premature deindustrialization in developing countries. No longer can government count on a growing industrial sector to absorb unskilled labor from rural areas. Now, competition between different producers in the pursuit of increased profits and greater markets led not only to extensive growth through accumulation and reproduction, but also to intensive growth as the producers reinvested profits into the development of new machinery, technologies, and productive techniques. Those who could not keep up with the application of the latest technology and technique produced at a higher cost would be undercut by their competitors. The weak producers will be out or under, with the stronger may lead over time to a concentration and centralization of capital in the hands of the few. We can see here the current global economic system has reached a certain level of centralization of capital that cannot be compared to the situation even 50 years ago. Among 5,000 odd oligopolies, the most powerful 2,000 oligopolies control every production and organization of exchange in the world. This is a terrific level of centralization of capital, very different from the scenario prevalent in the early 20th century, dominated by monopolies. So global wealth has reached a record $263 trillion in mid-2014, which is almost $20.1 trillion. More wealth has increased with 8.3% ratio when compared to mid-2013, and it is almost double than 2000. The top richest 1% people accumulated more wealth than 3.5 billion people who just survive with 1% wealth. The 500 richest people currently own $1.54 trillion, which is more than the entire GDP of Africa. So the top 1% of the global population had more than 50% of global wealth. Less than 50% goes to the rest of 99%. 62 billionaires have as much wealth as about 50% of global population in 2015, and Oxfam International predicts that the wealth of 1% of the richest people accounts to $110 trillion, and if this trend continues, they can control more wealth than 99% people in 2016. So question arises here, what is reason behind it? We find two-thirds of global inequality can be attributed to the effects of uneven development across the globe since the Industrial Revolution and colonialism, including and involving imperialism of free trade, myth of comparative advantage, obscuring the reality of absolute disadvantage, transformation of GATT to WTO at the expense of developing countries, increased food insecurity despite greater food availability, premature deindustrialization due to trade liberalization, and imaginizing growth, for example, with increases in productivity lowering agricultural prices rather than increasing farmers' incomes. Now, United Nations adopted 8 goals by the United Nations in 2000, how to eradicate extreme poverty and hunger. Second, to achieve universal primary education, to promote gender equality and empower women, to reduce child mortality, to improve maternal health, to combat HIV, AIDS, malaria and other diseases, to ensure environmental sustainability, and to develop a global partnership for development, and clearly instructed and urged that almost all nations should follow within the target period. So we have seen the current these problems directly. It is product of the current capitalist systems. So poverty, either poverty or backwardness or unemployment or income inequality gap or environmental degradation, all types of these problems or economic ills, it is these are products of the current systems like capitalist systems. Now we want to discuss about regional integration. On other hand, along with globalism, regionalism is various several organizations, regional organizations evolving along with globalization process, namely South-South cooperation, BRICS initiatives, or ALBA, or Asia Pacific, or BRICS, Shanghai cooperation, ASEAN plus 3, several organizations in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America. So the South-South initiative, the theories and principles of South-South cooperation are really inspired by those mentioned in 1955 during the first Africa-Asia summit and how evolved over time. But academicians, policymakers and practitioners from South could not arrive at any agreed configuration for development model. Some kinds of consensus attain the development for the South should follow a separate path, clearly indicates disintegrate from the Western former colonial masters to gain their own objectives such as balance, equitable and self-reliant growth. South-South trade in 2014 comprised about 25%. Southern export to the other countries of the South now accounts more than 50% of the exports of most developing nations. While such exports remain concentrated within the regions, as intra-regional exports are much greater than inter-regional exports. Asia and Latin America were most responsible for the doubling in the value of world commercial services export over the last decade in 2014, it reached an unprecedented 4.9, almost 50 trillion dollar. The most recent estimate of the value of annual South-South cooperation for development is $20 billion. The share of intra-regional exports has declined in all regions. Most regions have increased their export to Asia and especially East Asia. Now, regionalism had emerged along with globalism. Several organizations we have discussed about: IPSA, India, Brazil, South Africa, China, Russia bilateral agreement; BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa; BRICS, Shanghai Cooperation Organization; Eurasian Economic Union, the Indian Ocean Rim; ASEAN plus 3 partners including China, India and South Korea; ALBA, Bolivian Alternative for Latin America. These are mainly major regional organizations represents Asia, Latin America and African countries. Second regional organization recently evolved as BRICS initiative. The BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India and China and South Africa concept launched by first Jim O'Neill, chairman of investment bank Goldman Sachs, wrote a paper entitled Building Better Global Economic BRIC in 2001. The BRICS nations are seen by experts as an economic counterweight to the Western countries. BRICS today encompasses over 25% of world land coverage, 44% of world population, a combined GDP on the basis of PPP of $18.486 trillion, contribute 40% to the global GDP, 20% to global trade. Intra-trade reached at $500 billion in 2015 and $3.93 trillion reserve of foreign currency. Now we can see BRICS annual summit. Each year they naturally they meet, organize summit, especially in July this year. In October, India going to organize, especially in Goa in October this year. India is organizing BRICS summit, and BRICS try to promote de-dollarization process, de-dollarization, to try to reform international forum like international financial organization like World Bank and IMF, United Nations Security Council and other international agencies. It is so BRICS, but because of these 5 countries economic and political systems are not common, it's different. These 5 countries have different type of political, socio-economic and cultural systems. So it's not easy task. It's very difficult task to make common consensus to how to deep integration, how we can closely integrate these 5 countries economies, how we can deep integrate, then we can integrate the rest of the part of out of BRICS economies, especially developing countries economy. It's not easy task. Of course there is opportunity, but there is of course many challenges. Now question is, what is alternative? This regionalism is not final alternative of globalization. There is no final solution. We can't solve the problems of the society or nations that we have faced, where we have been facing today. So question is, what is uh, the final alternative. What is an alternative of the current system as well as globalization? Now, as an economist, I believe that we should concentrate because the vast majority will live in rural areas, either in Asia, Africa or Latin America or any other country. Vast majority, around 60 to 80% people who live in rural areas, and all over almost each and every nations, we are following our ruling class, bourgeoisie led state. We are promoting urban centered development model, urbanization, urban centered, metro centered development model, and rural areas since independent, since 1950, since the Second World War, these bourgeois led state, rural areas have been neglected so far. So we need to focus on rural areas, because the vast majority who live in rural areas, and they engage with agriculture sector, and these agriculture sector and rural areas have been neglected today. So it is how we could develop, we can develop rural areas. So it is possible to create taluk-wide viable large-scale network of production system of the rural poor based on local resources, capabilities and market through appropriate organizational and scientific and technological efforts to promote capability and economic skills in rural areas where around 80 to 85% majority people live there. Production center based on people's science and techniques by the area-based organization of rural poor based production unit run by artisans, blacksmiths and other for local distribution and local consumption. It can be done if the rural poor are organized to strengthen their interlinks and advance the local economy by encouraging local value addition through linking of primary and secondary production and through the technological upgradation of existing occupations, to avoid mutual competition among a small producer and for superior access to resources and markets, and to technology transfer to organize landless labor, artisans and poor peasants for area-based multi-sectoral large-scale production system. Under competitive conditions, the self-employed small producers have not only to come together for access to resources but also to emerge as a multi-sectoral collective of producers cooperating in production. Economies of scale are required to overcome adverse competition. The rural poor will have to be consciously networked and technologically advanced in a mutually complementing way. Rural poor will have to pool the resources and capabilities for raising the scale and scope for their collective production organization. This change in the scale and scope can allow the participating members to lower the barriers facing them in the creation and adoption of more sophisticated and improved technologies which can make their production more competitive than before in the local markets. In the local economy, the range of occupations engaging the rural poor is wide and varied, such as agricultural labor, small marginal cultivators, hides and skins occupations ranging over flying, carcass utilization, tanning and product making, cloth weaving, dyeing and printing, fiber collection, extraction, baskets and mat weaving, animal husbandry, poultry, fishing, toddy tapping, etc. and allied secondary process like food processing, blacksmithing, carpentry, pottery, and uh, and engineering, artisans or handicraft occupations, manual haulage and transportation including cycle rickshaw and scavenging. The networks of group enterprises comprising rural poor can be built around the principle of workers' cooperatives, for example, worker ownership, collective appropriation of surplus and full participation in decision making process. This multi-sectoral approach with focus on inclusive economic growth would help eradicate poverty. Around 60 to 80% people live in rural areas in Africa, South Asia, China, Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam and other countries who depend on agriculture sector as it is at substantial level. More than 62% landless poor people are engaged with the agriculture sector in backward states in India like Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, West Bengal, Assam, Orissa, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, now migrated to urban areas for searching a new job for survival. Overcoming poverty requires a contest, a specific multi-pronged strategy that includes a basic needs approach, a human rights entitlement approach, a natural resource management approach, and a focus on inclusive growth, economic growth, etc. To achieve inclusive development with fair, justice and sustainability, it requires to invest not only in higher value manufacturing industry but also into sectors that contribute to broader public policy goals such as health and nutrition, education, agriculture and environment, as well as across a range of activities that support overall development including all marketing, management and financial services. Such investment over a period of time help to increase internal capability or capacity and the ability to adapt and apply existing technologies, thereby leading to a gradual increase in productivity and social welfare. So this is alternate path of development if we follow, if we concentrate on rural areas where vast majority people live there, if we transform agriculture sectors, traditional agriculture sector, and we focus on health and education and other welfare schemes, social welfare schemes. Especially we need to provide education for all, health for all and job for all. On these three areas, if we focus on health, education and social welfare scheme through promoting and increasing, enlarging rural areas local economy, and we can interlink these local areas, local agro-based economy to urban economy, closely interlinked. So we can engage vast majority peoples. We can engage in all economic and social and political political activity. If vast majority participate in economic and other activities, then we can develop socio-economic, cultural, all sectors we can develop, and vast people will be benefited from them. Currently we have seen that the majority people are alienated from economic activities, alienated from cultural activity, alienated from other types of social and political activities. We need to associate with economic and other activities. Question is how we can associate, associate them. So we have an alternative We can, if we follow, we can develop, we can adopt, we can focus on rural areas through multi-sectoral large scale of production and distribution network. If we create, if we generate. So to promote multi-sectoral large production and distribution network through these steps, we can solve the problems of the society like poverty, backwardness, unemployment, illiteracy, malnutrition, environmental degradation, all types of. We can solve the problems of the society as well nation. Thank you very much.